Welcome to the Tuesday, December 8th, 2020 meeting of the Longmeadow School Committee. Per Governor Baker's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting. The school committee is using the Zoom meeting platform to conduct this meeting. LCTV is live streaming the meeting on Channel 12, and a recording of the meeting will be posted to the LCTV YouTube channel as soon as possible after the meeting. Just a reminder that all votes while participating remotely must be made by roll call vote. Since we are fully remote, we will not have a Pledge of Allegiance. We're now up to correspondence. Kevin?
Thanks, Ryan. We received several memos from Mr. Donald Jarvis, Director of Occupational Education at CTEC, regarding the Walter E. Quigley Jr. Student of the Month Award. For September, Longmeadow student recognized was Mary Alice Miranda for Graphic and Visual Design 2. For October, Longmeadow students recognized were Charles Miranda for Building Property Maintenance and Caleb Zai for Machine Technology 3. And in November, Longmeadow student recognized was Jalen Rivera for Integrated Occupational Prep.
Thank you. And to announce that I'm at home, my dog would like to say hi to everybody. So I can mute myself as quickly as possible. We have the student advisory to the school committee is here to present to us tonight.
Yeah, so we're gonna, I think, start with the clubs and activities report, and we're gonna go in the order that we decided previously. I'm not exactly sure who's supposed to go first.
I believe Thomas is going first.
Sure. So I'll be reporting on the yearbook, Model Congress, Model UN, and Democrats Club. So right now, the yearbook is rolling out the superlatives and getting the posters together. They also are finishing up the book, which is in the process of, getting ready to be sold. Model Congress and Model UN had virtual conferences, and they each went well. Model UN is now getting ready for a training conference, and then Model Congress has another conference coming up in January, all virtual, of course. And then the Democrats Club did phone banks for Biden, and now we're gathering members, hopefully having more virtual events soon, and maybe some legislative work as well.
So I'm going next. I'm presenting about Impressions, Key Club, NHS, and Film Club. So Impressions has been meeting bi-weekly under the direction of its two student editors. They have spent their first several meetings getting to know each other and welcoming new members. In the next few months, they'll turn their attention to collecting submissions for a spring issue of the magazine. Whether that's virtual or physical, it's still up in the air. Key Club has shifted over to a remote setting this year, also due to COVID. Meetings are every other Monday evening, and currently they are finding ways to stay involved and engage with the community and continuing to work with some of the Kiwanis partners such as March of Dimes and Thirst Project, despite the inability to host larger events at this time. This year, they're requiring members to obtain 15 credits, the 1 credit equals 1 hour of service exchange rate, by the end of the year. Similar to Key Club, NHS has made the move to fully virtual operations as well. So far this year, they've had 12 students sign up for virtual tutoring, which is a significant increase compared to previous years. In addition to that, they're planning to host some fundraising events, such as a clothing drive and a food drive. Film Club is a new club this year that was formed by junior students Cooper Rich and Aiden Cass. So far, the club has been meeting weekly where students get together over Zoom and discuss the films they've watched from a cultural, historical, and analytical perspective. In meetings, students also have the opportunity to watch award-winning films or parts of them, which they then talk about afterwards.
I'm going to be talking about, I guess, an overview of what's going on in the music department, and then followed by what's going on in the art department and respectively what clubs they have. The music department, we just had our first virtual concert of the year, the chamber concert. There was roughly 10 performances, both instrumental and vocal. Kids from all cohorts were able to participate. We had LCTV film outdoor performances in person, and we also had the option of sending videos in virtually for students who didn't feel comfortable coming into school. Upcoming events that we have is our winter concert, which will be virtual, and across the department, from our instrumental groups to our vocal groups, have been compiling individual videos to put into various pieces and performances to be performed later this month or these next coming winter months. We also have, generally every year we do caroling, but because of the pandemic, we can't do this in person. We generally go to the senior centers, the local senior centers, and a couple of upperclassmen from the music department have put together virtual caroling, and we've been trying to reach out. They've been trying to reach out across the department to see who will participate this year. So one thing, the virtual and the instrumental band and the choral groups have been singing outside, which has been going pretty well. It's been definitely getting colder, but feedback from the students says that they enjoy it because they can actually, play their instrument or sing. Another exciting thing in the choral, with the choral group specifically, is we are working with a group from Cornell University, paired with a previous LHS grad who is now a composer, to create an original piece for the upcoming concerts. And some concerns that people in the music department have had over the pandemic is just about not having music opportunities for the middle schoolers, and how this will impact the incoming freshman class with participation in the music department. And I guess now onto the art department. The art department's been plugging away like normal. Students have been participating in relatively normally over Zoom and in person. They've been working very independently, but the Zoom has allowed them to have one-on-one time with teachers, which is very beneficial. One of the clubs the art department has that is up and running is the pottery club. They also have the photo club, which has not been able to navigate the COVID situation with meeting yet, but the pottery club meets every Tuesday and Thursday in person for cohorts A and B, and then C can join virtually. They're working on making clay jewelry. They just put in an order, and they're going to be distributing all of that to people, everyone virtually now, and they're going to be making jewelry for the upcoming holiday season.
All right, and I will be going over Stand Club and GSA. So Stand Club has continued to generate ideas for the club to put together. Remote meetings have relatively gone smoothly and have been easily able to communicate with each other. Stand Club has accomplished several goals. They have conducted various events and established a social media presence this year. They're currently working on a celebrity project and a social norms campaign, and they will soon begin a body positivity campaign. They do not have any concerns in regards to how their club will continue to operate, because the club does not, for the most part, meet in person. The only issue entails putting up posters around the school when necessary. The pandemic is actually quite beneficial for Stand Club due to the increased time students have, resulting in increased member numbers this year. However, a sense of lack of motivation is noticeable, likely caused from quarantining in the pandemic. Overall, the club feels like it's doing its best it can to adapt given the circumstances, and they hope to continue their work for the students of LHS. On to GSA. GSA believes they have managed very well during the pandemic. Most of the meetings consist of things they do not require participants to be in person. GSA is currently working on their holiday festivities and brainstorming upcoming events. So far, they have organized an event for Trans Day of Remembrance and have completed virtual posters about the LGBTQ+ celebrities. They do not have any major concerns regarding their current operation, and the club believes it is doing its best it can to adapt to the pandemic as well.
So I'll be talking about as school match wits, Science Olympiad, and I'm going to give a recap on fall sports. So Science Olympiad is LHS's science competition team. They met a couple of times virtually, and mostly the students are communicating virtually to form teams and have registered for a couple of events. Students are mostly studying on their own or in small groups in preparation for these competitions, and all of their competitions will be virtual. So As Schools Match Wits is LHS's trivia team. They're preparing once a week, and they have a virtual tournament on December 13th, and they will compete against other local high schools' trivia teams. So for fall sports, I spoke with Mr. Capitasto to get a fall sports recap from him. So overall, this season looked very different for our student athletes, especially with COVID precautions, limited spectators, and alternative rules. But despite this, our teams were very successful. Boys and girls cross country were both 3-0. Golf was 8-0. Field hockey 6-0. Boys soccer was 4-1. Girls soccer was 3-2-2. And girls volleyball was 5-2. So actually, all of our teams had winning records, which is very impressive. 2 of our teams were still able to do some version of their community service project. Field hockey was still able to do their Play for a Cure fundraiser for breast cancer awareness. And boys cross country was able to raise some money for the Carl Walker Anti-Bullying Foundation. And for individual achievements, as I think we all know, senior Tommy Lee, who you just heard from, broke the course record at cross country's Turner Park 5K course with a time of 15 minutes and 46 seconds.
And after that, that's me. So I'll be reporting on the Jet Jotter, Red Cross Club, and Climate Change Club. So at the Jet Jotter, we're just writing articles. We may have had some reporters reach out to members of the school committee for comment, and I thank you guys for answering. Motivation is hard to find when there's no print issues, but we're chugging along, writing stories, and it's all posted online at thejetjotter.com. For the Red Cross Club, they're finishing holiday cards for doctors and planning to pick them up and deliver them to Holyoke Medical Center next week. The past few meetings, they've been putting people into breakout rooms to make holiday cards together. They switch up breakout rooms every 5 minutes so that people in the club can chat with each other and meet new people. And they have almost 300 cards made as of now. And for the Climate Change Club, they made an Instagram account this week called at LHS Climate Change Club, very self-descriptive. And they're posting a school-wide questionnaire soon to figure out what they're going to be doing. I believe that's it for our activities and clubs update and fall sports update as well. And for the next part, we did a questionnaire. We interviewed students. This is on the agenda as the student reflections on learning during COVID-19. And we made a little presentation to go along with our what we'll be talking about. And I'm wondering if I could share my screen to show that, or should I sent it to Dr. O'Shea.
Yeah, I got you covered, Maxim. Let me pull it up, okay?
All right.
1 second.
Okay. All right. So something that I wanted to do was provide some more information about how students feel about learning and school in general right now, to provide some more context when the school committee makes decisions. What the school committee, student advisory committee, and I did to try to do this was to do one-on-one interviews with students and ask them some questions about their experience so far. Could we go to the next slide, please? So the method that we did this by, we talked to 25 students in total, and we asked them the same 5 questions. We gave them full anonymity, and then afterwards we pulled out, so we wrote everything down, and afterwards we pulled out any trends that we saw in responses, and that's what we're reporting on here. And in no ways is this a random sample, and if I had to comment on a confounding factor that I think occurred, I think we had more students from AP and honors classes than is in the general student population. I know personally the people I spoke to were a little bit skewed that way, but we figured that this would be a better way of getting a gauge of what students feel than sending out an email blast with a form, because people were more likely to respond and give better answers this way. Could we go to the next slide, please? So for the first trends that we pulled out on why students chose in-school learning. Almost all said that they chose it, a big reason that they chose with the social interaction, that they learn better in person, especially when something that I heard about math and science, learning in person really helped. Most that chose in-school learning felt that it was safe and that the precautions taken were adequate. Just some things that people mentioned were that some students did crowd in hallways, but usually that was dispersed by teachers pretty quickly. Another concern was a few teachers would take off their masks to speak. No school-wide policy on how to drink water, which was interesting. So essentially, students can take off their masks to quickly drink water in class, but how that's done is kind of seems to be up to the teachers right now. And some students were sometimes concerned about students taking off their masks to drink water in class. And I think we'll discuss lunch a little bit later. We have a separate slide for that. Could we go to the next slide, please? And then other trends that we pulled out on why students chose to be in Cohort C. And as we know, there's a lot of people in Cohort C right now. I think just a lot of people in Cohort C right now. So some felt that it was unsafe, especially kids that started out in Cohort A or B and then switched to Cohort C. The reason that they switched, they felt that it was unsafe, especially when they saw the news reports that cases were rising. They felt like there wasn't a significant difference in their classes. And this is especially for some kids who have multiple classes that they do on Zoom even when they're in school because their teacher is out of school. So they felt like given the added convenience and time management that they could do themselves, they felt that there wasn't a significant difference since teachers have done such a good job making the lessons good for both people at home and in school. Could we go to the next slide, please? And then another big question that came up was the question of academic dishonesty. So most students, if not all students, said it was happening, but there was no way to prevent it. Most said that they felt it as a disadvantage, but most also said that they didn't care as much because they knew that they weren't cheating, and as such, what other students did didn't affect them. At the same time, students also are concerned about class ranks that the colleges get in the future, and they are concerned. It's a little bit to the social aspect, and when you get asked, what's your grade, what you get, and a lot of times scaling of tests that occurs if the whole class did really poorly, the scaling can be changed. But if the whole class did really well, because a lot of the people in class were cheating, scaling occurs a lot less. So they felt, while they didn't care about academic dishonesty in terms of, you don't care what the other students are doing, there were these issues that got brought up. And they felt that there was no way to control it when testing. And some teachers have tried lockdown browsers, but they mentioned that this still leaves the option for people to use their phone or to take notes or to use notes. And some students mentioned that they would, afterwards taking a test at school, they'd go on their phone and they'd notice that the group chat for the class would, they'd be all working together, or some people had FaceTime to work together during the class. And that's even with the cameras open, it's still fairly easy. Some felt that given the circumstances, we shouldn't be testing, but instead should be doing projects, or essays in English classes, for example. And there has been most have said that there has been significantly less testing this year, given the circumstances. And others also say that something that they liked from a few of their classes was their teacher would make all tests open notes. So whether you were in school or out of school, it would be open notes either way. And they felt like that put them at a more even playing field, even though some students could still be working together at home. But having the ability to have notes open, just like if you were at home, eating with notes open, they felt like they're a little bit at a more even playing field. And a few mentioned that it was almost a disincentive to choose in-school learning because they could be at home. Cheating. And I think there was a quote. It wasn't someone who I interviewed, but looking at some other interviews that people did was, if I'm not doing it, the other people are doing it, and I'm not sure how true that is, but that is prevailing feeling. And a few students actually said, please don't mention this to the school committee because they're worried about the teachers starting to use software that tracks students' eyes. Something that's been, we read about on the news is these lockdown browsers that will also track your eyes where you're looking. And they think that's dystopian and invades student privacy, to which I said, I'm sure our school wouldn't do something that invades student privacy. And that's it for this slide. And could we have the next slide, please?
So in our data, we kind of asked about what aspects of the remote and the hybrid learning that students liked and would like to see going forward with the pandemic, going forward after the pandemic. Students liked the extra sanitation measures. They liked that, say you were in cohort B or C, and because of the restrictions, if you didn't feel well, whether it was a cold, anything that could be remotely close to COVID, you would have to stay home. Students felt that this could be useful in the future, just if someone had to stay home sick, that they would still be able to participate in school and not be behind. Students liked the more open campus approach. It gives them more freedom with their schedule, whether their time management, what classes they want to kind of be in school for and go home for ICEs, etc. Students also liked the extended passing time, which went up from around 3 minutes to 10 minutes. It allowed students to stay after classes because a lot of the times you're finishing a test or a quiz and you need those 3 to 5 extra minutes just to wrap it up, or they're talking to a teacher, or they're going from the BTC to the language department. You can go to the next slide.
All right, so what students don't like? We found these 3 issues to be the most consistently spoken when asked in their interviews. So first and foremost, lunch, it's considered a little awkward. Sophomores and freshmen are those that are required to stay in school for lunch, and oftentimes the junior and senior section of the cafeteria is close to almost completely empty because they're the ones that get to go home and have the off-campus opportunity. We've heard often the suggestion of displacing the sophomores and freshmen into the junior senior area to minimize the awkwardness. This would also allow for greater social distancing. So there's multiple benefits to that. Next, we have classes are awkwardly silent occasionally. This is because some teachers are unsure of how to organize their classes in regards to participation, which leads to students not participating in fear of being interrupted by others. We don't want to interrupt each other when we unmute. But we have heard that using the raise hand button on Zoom often helps organize the class participation, or simply raising your hand on Zoom so the teacher knows that you have something to say. And lastly, rule changes in sports affecting how the game is played. In regards to the rule changing, there isn't much that we can do to resolve this issue because of the state guidelines, but that was a consistent complaint.
So workload seemed to be an issue with a variety of opinions. Some students seemed to like the 4 class a day schedule, and others didn't. But one common thing that we heard was that some students felt that they had to teach themselves more than in the past because teachers were conducting less in-class lessons and instead using their class time for collaborative work. And some teachers will post their lectures online so that they can use the in-class time for projects. But again, in this area, opinions in regards to workload seem to be an area where we didn't find an extremely strong common thread.
All right, so how communication has been. So most people said that the communication about academics and communication from the administration was fine, although some did express frustration over a double standard they seem to feel, where teachers expected quick replies, but then would take themselves more time to reply than what they expected of the students. Some also said they had issues communicating with their guidance counselors, and others said that communication about sports was sparse and confusing, but has now picked up.
Regarding sports, most of the students we surveyed felt that the precautions and safety guidelines written out in the fall were adequate to create a safe environment. There was a good amount of social distancing. Obviously, sometimes for some sports that can't be kept at all times, but masks were worn by athletes and coaches at all times for the most part. Many students felt captains did a very good job enforcing the mask rule and other safety measures, taking the responsibility to ensure safety for everyone. And additionally, most students want to see winter sports run, given that sports are such a big part of many students' lives, and would participate given that there will be the necessary precautions.
So to add to the one-on-one interviews we did with students, we also sent out a form to the whole school last week and got 197 responses, which is pretty good response rate for how students respond to email forms generally. And here we just asked 5 questions about how students protected themselves during the pandemic. In retrospect, we realized that the questions and answers could have been phrased better, and students reached out to tell me that. Our goal was to make the form very short so students wouldn't see it instantly become overwhelmed and not answer. So that's why the answers were so simple. But we hope to do this again, do it better. And having learned from this hindsight, I think I would have made the answers mostly yes and mostly not. Regardless, here are the answers. So we asked, do you wear a mask at all times when outside? And most of the people said yes, almost 60%, 40% said no. Do you meet with people outside your household outdoors? Most of the people said yes, 80% almost said yes, and 20% said no. Do you invite people from outside your household into your home or car? And most of the people said no, about 60% said no, and 40% said yes. Do you wear a mask when inside or in a car with people outside of your household? And about 3/4 said yes, and a fourth said no. And do you travel out of state? This one we maybe should have broken up into Connecticut and then other out of state as in travel. We had again a 3/4 say no to that. They do not travel out of state, and 25% say yes, they do. And that's it for our surveys and our one-on-one interviews. And that's it for what the school committee student advisory committee did.
Thank you all very much. Just checking, Maxim, that's the end of the presentation. Is that correct?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So I really appreciate you guys always coming out and giving us great information. Obviously, education right now is learning. The adults are learning as much about this as you guys are. So getting your feedback about what's working and what isn't is extremely important. Obviously, you will all keep working with Mr. Dunkerley and sharing your opinions and the feedback of the students to help make it better this year and for the students who come after you. It would be very unfortunate for us to run into another pandemic that causes this, but if it does, we can be prepared based on the information you all share to help us and help the teachers do a better job. So thank you. And I also want to congratulate you guys on all the work you do with your clubs. It is really hard to be running clubs right now, and you always have a lot going on. So on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for that, because we really do appreciate all the good works. Committee members, I don't know if anyone else has anything they'd like to say to our students. Lots of thumbs up. Gianna, you want to speak? Go ahead.
Thanks, Ryan. I just wanted to echo what you were saying, and I know these student reps personally. I have the honor of knowing them personally as friends and teammates of both my children. So I just wanted to thank you all for being leaders and role models and just all around awesome. You know, you got your sense of humor, your talents, your skills, just super appreciated and recognized. So thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Just a couple of points that I wanted to make. I really liked your suggestions about, you know, how we could do similar things once we get out of the pandemic. I'd be interested to hear how that discussion goes, especially the open campus one, which I know is the most popular thing going on right now in my house. But I do want to get back to the issue of academic dishonesty. I thought that was really well done. I appreciate that a lot. That's something, you know, since I think you all know that I teach in college, like we talk about constantly. And Maxim, I really want to push what you said, which is the issue that I think all tests should be open book right now. And I'm happy to debate that with anybody. But I think it's too much to expect people not to be using their notes and books when we're operating in this weird hybrid or online only. So I would advocate for all the teachers to do open book tests, because I agree with you, it's happening. And if we want to pretend it's not, we're lying to ourselves. So I fully support you. And the idea that any of us would support Big Brother software, I really hope we don't ever go there, because it's just not effective. And I hope we're trying to create a culture of mutual respect, and that's going to destroy that. So anyway, I really appreciated the comments that you made. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I completely agree with that sentiment. Susie?
I completely agree with Kevin, and thank you to all of you. I really appreciate the honesty, especially, you know, from the results. And Maxim, you said something, you know, that I think is even more important. You know, yes, there are tests and there are need for tests, but there's also a need for a balanced assessment approach. And so when you look at the opportunity that projects have during this time, where you can do some collaboration in breakout rooms, and you can do some, you know, even independent work that you know, you can capture in a way that really assesses skills and not necessarily where you can find information in a book or where you can find it in a lecture, I think definitely benefit from. And again, especially in this time period where teaching and learning honestly is being revolutionized by all of this. And so I'm hopeful that, you know, you bringing this to light will certainly move things in that direction. That seems to be the best way to go. So I want to thank all of you. You did a fantastic job. It was super organized and you rocked it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other committee members with a comment? Thank you as always to the students. Marty, anything else?
No, I thank them for their presentation. Thank Mr. Dunkerley for shepherding their great work and for joining us tonight as well. So thanks, Paul.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Next up on our agenda, we have the possibility of a motion on minutes.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes for the November 16th, 2020 school committee meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes from November 16th? Seeing none, we can call for a vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Names are all over the place. Did I get everybody, Diane? Except myself? I did? Okay. And yes for me as well. People were leaving the meeting, so everything was shifting while I was looking. Next up, we have visitor comments. As always during a remote, if there's anybody that would like to make a comment, you need to make yourself known to me so that I can call on you. So feel free to unmute and say your name, and then I'll call on you. Seeing none, we can move on. School committee announcements and recognitions. Gianna.
I know I was able to express my appreciation for the student leaders and role models, but I also wanted to thank all of the students who are participating in those clubs and making them, you know, as successful as they are. I know that, you know, it's due in large part to the advisors and to the student leaders, but to all the participants as well who are continuing and making those opportunities and experiences happen.
Well said. Thank you very much. Any other committee members? Okay, so now we will have our business with guests. Marty, would you like to start with the in-person remote learning update? And I believe the chief is on with us. I don't know if he'll be part of that as well.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I think given the news that went out from the district today, I think it would be wise to sort of elevate this as an agenda item. I think, you know, as we should, if I could sort of cede some of my time here to Chief Dearborn. I know he updated the select board last night on sort of town-wide trends, and he's been a great partner and a very helpful source of information to our entire administrative team. So, Chief, if we could ask you to give us a little update, a little status report, and then I'll describe the decision that we made today for those who perhaps need additional information.
Thank you, Marty. Everybody can hear me okay? First, I really appreciate hearing the last part of the student advisors presentation, and I'd love to get a copy of that slide of their COVID questionnaire. That was some great data that would be very useful for us. So it's jdearborn@longmeadow.org if somebody could send that to me. Love to look at the whole presentation, honestly. So where are we at in town as far as COVID? And I'm always about the numbers, and we look at the data because it's probably the easiest, the best way to track it. We've really starting on November 19th, we started to see a pretty rapid climb in our numbers, our percent positivity. The 19th of November, the 25th report were both kind of frustrating. We were going in the wrong direction. And then on the 3rd of December, we actually had a very, we saw improvement. We went from 51 average cases down to 40. Our percent positivity went from 2.19 to 1.81. And this is after a lot of testing that took place during the pre-Thanksgiving holiday. As you recall, there was a huge rush on testing. People wanted to be tested before they traveled. And that did impact other communities' numbers significantly. Coming back, so there was a lot of decision making that and I spent quite a bit of time on the phone with the superintendent. We were looking at daily numbers, and we were actually continued to track fairly well. Our average case count per day, we were still in the 1s and 2s. And then over the last couple of days, we've seen somewhat of a spike. And we're averaging about 4 new cases a day. Our active cases, as we sit here at the moment, are 51. And as I've explained before, we can lose 5 cases a day, pick 5 cases up. For example, today we lost 5, gained 12. And that was today was one of the bigger days we've had. Although, if you look at our community's performance as compared to other communities, we're really doing quite well. Doesn't mean that we drop our guard. We need to really get into the game now. There's a lot of COVID around. What we're seeing in our other communities, similar demographic, similar population, our neighboring communities, their numbers are going up exponentially. I spoke to a couple of my counterparts today. They saw double numbers since the weekend. One community saw triples since the weekend. So I think that's really, we're seeing a lot of impact from that. A lot of our employees live in other communities. There's a lot of interaction with other communities. And because of that, when we get other infections, contact tracing, actual positive cases, there's still a lot of COVID around us and in our own community. So combination of all those factors were some of the motivation and some of the things the superintendent and I talked about on what direction we're going in. We expect to see more of a peak this week based on the trends. But I am optimistic that if the community does performs like it has, we should drop off, hopefully, as long as people do their part. So I guess that's really all I have for now. If I can answer any specifics, you're more than welcome.
Does anyone have any questions for Chief Dearborn? I don't see any. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. I guess I would just be curious. I feel like I often ask this question when you're here, but as you reflect on Marty's message today, where we're hoping to get students back in person on January 4th, what would you say to the community to help make that more likely than not?
Yeah, Kevin, thank you. It'll be really the same message. When we look at the case causes, it's not a lot of new information. What we saw over the holidays, so there's a difference between what happened in the spring and what happened now. There's a big difference. In the spring, we saw very little community spread. Most of the cases, the highest volume in Longmeadow, was really in our congregate and elderly housing. Those are really clear now because we have so many protective strategies, so much testing going on in those that we're really fighting the fight in a different manner this time. What we're seeing now is it's getting into families. One member gets it and runs through the entire family. So, to give you an example, we had 2 or 3 families come out in the last couple of days. They're batches of 5, one whole family all at once. So when we talk to families, when our public health nurse interviews them, they attended a holiday dinner, they traveled, they did it as a group. It really, it's getting into those gathering scenarios without masks that people you don't live with normally. So we know that's the problem. So we really are going to be working, trying to do better at communicating that. Travel's a problem. We see that. And to a certain extent, some sports activities seem to be a problem. And I hate to say that because I love to see the kids engaged in sports, but we really need to be cautious when the kids are engaged in the different sporting activities. So I just want to reiterate, although we've had cases associated with the schools, we still have not seen any in-school transmission from one student to the other in the school environment. I think the protective strategies that we have in place in the schools have been very effective. Is there room for improvement? Is there more diligence? Absolutely, and always. As we learn, we continue to feed information through our facilities department to the school administration, and we will get better as we go along. I hate to even use this term, but it's a term that's becoming more popular. It's learning to live with COVID. We've got a ways to go in this, folks, and we need to be able to live with it and function within this pandemic. So hopefully I answer your question, Kevin.
Yeah, no, that was great. If I could just follow up, can you just be more specific about what sports you're worried about?
Hockey seems to be a problem. The sports hockey, we've seen a couple, really that's the most recent one that we've seen, and a few other club sports. So.
Susie.
Is that, Chief, thank you for that, first of all. And second of all, is that the hockey piece, is that from a statewide perspective or more a local?
That's specifically local.
Specifically local, okay.
Jamie.
Thank you very much, Chief. I just have a question, just follow up to those. Was it the travel of the family of the hockey families that was the issue, or was the transmission happened at the hockey or sporting event facility that was the issue?
My understanding, it was a combination.
Okay.
Yep. So, one of the rules in the student advisors touched on with their survey is traveling together. So, we both got kids engaged in a sport. We want to carpool if we're going somewhere to travel. So we load 2 or 3 non-familiar members in our car. And we travel for an hour together. Even with the masks on, how effective is that in a small space? Probably not. It's just not a good practice. If you're going to do that, you got to do it smart. You got take individual vehicles when you're at a facility, social distance the best you can, and keep the masks on. I mean, there's ways to do it, and it's not, and COVID is not always preventable. There are situations where it can be transmitted even if you're doing everything right. So
just as a follow-up to that, so it's not the actual sport that's the issue, it's the getting to the sport or families that are going and attending events with non-family members. There's not transmission going on in a rink on a field. Similar there, we haven't seen the transmission within the schools. The problem is the get to or the what else are you doing, whether you're a student, teacher, staff, or just a local community member. Have we seen any the actual sporting event? Because I haven't heard any. That's why I was interested to hear whether we've seen some within town.
It's been, I believe the highest contributor based on what we're seeing is that the non on ice interaction. Do they stop for a meal? Do they travel in cars together? I would suspect it. Obviously, Jamie, I'm not an epidemiologist.
Yep.
So
I got you.
Those are the consistent things we're seeing. And they're really that we're looking at the scenarios. Okay, how did this group have this issue? That's what we're seeing.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thanks, Chief. Marty, you have more for us?
Sure, yeah, it's a segue off of Chief's comments, and I appreciate him joining us yet again to provide the broader context and for advising us regularly over the last several months. So, today, obviously, we made the very, very difficult decision to shift to remote learning beginning tomorrow, with accepting that we will continue to serve students in the integrated preschool and students in our 11 intensive special needs programs, which Jean Fontaine is on our call, and she's going to update us on that during the school improvement plan presentation. So it was a really very, very difficult decision. If I could say one thing, it's that it was really no single factor, but really a combination of factors that caused us to have to make this decision. And, as we've said many times, we all understand the benefits of in-person learning, and it saddens us, frankly, to see that we had to shift to remote learning. We think it's the right thing to do. What I have great confidence in is that over the last several months, our teachers have refined their remote instructional practices, and they have become skilled and adept and creative, and I'm confident that they're going to be able to sustain their connections with students at home, and that they'll be able to continue providing a first-class education. So, I feel like, as Chief said, things are different now than they were in the spring, and one of the big things that's different now as compared to the spring is our readiness for this upcoming remote session that we're looking at. So I appreciate everybody's efforts to make it work. The combination of factors that caused us to have to shift to remote learning relate to staffing. Chief mentioned that it's not just about our experience here locally, and it's not just about the fact that we've been good at eliminating or not seeing school-based transmission, but the reality is it's about our connection to other communities. And we have teachers coming and educators and staff coming from dozens and dozens of communities, and to the extent that those communities are seeing spikes, or to the extent that those communities are falling behind in contact tracing or testing results, then that affects us. And so we've seen over the last several weeks, we've seen some staffing challenges that have become more and more difficult. And each time a teacher stays home out of abundance of caution because they're experiencing some flu-like symptoms, or each time that there is a teacher subject to a quarantine order, it becomes difficult to cover their classes. And this is at a time when we're challenged to find substitute teachers, and we're stretched then to begin with. So, it really is, we've been facing some very, very significant operational challenges to the point where it begins to compromise instruction and oversight of the students that are in person. And I think the commitment that we made to this community right along is that we would want to move at the first sign of rapid rise, the first signs of case acceleration. And so that's a commitment that we have been talking about since August or even July, and that's a commitment that we wanted to honor. And I am hopeful. I know that there are some community members that are really disappointed with this decision. There are maybe some that feel that we should extend the closure period and move it to a week or 2 weeks even after January. The communication today, we told the community, we told parents, staff that we want to hold out the possibility that we could return students to in-person learning on January 4th. And so if we have, a handle on the staffing issues, if we see that contact tracing is catching up in the region, if we see, that the numbers are in our favor, then that's a decision that we could make, because I still do believe that students belong in school. I want to continue planning in that direction. We're going to talk about that next week. And I still believe that the protocols, the procedures, the guidelines that we have in place will keep our staff and students safe. But right now, it's just the combination of all these factors, creating some pretty serious educational challenges, operational challenges for us as well. So, it really, like I said, it saddened me to send that email. It saddens all of us that we're in this position. I wrote to the staff today that it was March 13th, Friday, March 13th, that we sent an email saying we were going to close for a couple of weeks. And none of us would have imagined that 9 months later, we'd still be making these same decisions. So, but I think we're stronger, we're better positioned educationally. And we look forward to, a time when we can return students to in-person learning, because that still is, I want to be really clear, that's still our goal. And if we can do that on January 4th, we'll do that. But, certainly a lot of things have to be in place for that to happen. So I appreciate, everyone's flexibility, and I want to publicly acknowledge that this is a significant burden for the families that are affected by this decision, and we stand ready to support them in any way that we can. So happy to answer any questions, or if the committee needs any clarification on anything, happy to do that now.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say that all along, I appreciate the transparency. There have been numerous emails, announcements in all of our meetings that this is a possibility, that we're going to keep looking at the health metrics. We appreciate the chief always making the time to join us and tell people what's going on in town. And I just think that people have been forewarned if they've been reading their emails from the district and watching our meetings. We talk about it every single time that this is a possibility. So obviously we appreciate the information. We know it's a difficult situation, but it is one that was likely coming just because of the cases. I know that in Springfield, where I work, it was a 41% jump over the weekend. There's a lot. So we appreciate it. We know it's a difficult thing that you and the administrators and the teachers have been dealing with. So I just want to thank you, at least for all the forewarning that this was a possibility. Committee, anybody have any questions for Marty? Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. I definitely agree with you, recognizing how tough this is. And one thing that I want to start with, I'm really proud of what the district has been able to do. I'm frankly really proud of the committee and the administration for, I think, doing a really good job of trying to balance all the issues we've had to balance. And I think we've done the best we could. And I think you're right. I think we've hit a point that's the tipping point, and we have to do this for everybody's safety. And it really does stink, but it's where we are, and we have to do the right thing. So thank you for continuing to lead us through this, Marty. I think we're lucky to have you doing this. So thank you for that. The question that I have, we talked about some of the surrounding communities. Is there anybody who is still in person at this point?
So among we often talk about our membership in the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, and those districts, West Side is remote, Southwick Tolland is remote, Ludlow is remote, East Longmeadow is remote, Agawam and Hampton-Wilbraham are still in person. I did have conversations with the superintendents in those two districts this week, and they're facing the exact same challenges that we are. So I don't know what's in store for them over the next few days, but I know that their experience is very similar to ours at this point. Yeah, and then even beyond the collaborative districts, I think there unfortunately is many districts that are in the same boat. I can't speak to what's happening sort of west of us, but certainly the bigger communities out east are experiencing the same thing as well.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marty.
No, the other thing I'd mention is just the we've been watching student attendance and staff attendance over the last couple of weeks, and I appreciate the office staff that gathered some data for us today. But we've seen a steady increase in the number of student absences and a steady growth in the percentage of students in Cohort C. So, clearly, for various reasons, but sometimes for health and safety reasons, students are not joining us in person.
And I think to echo again what Maxim and his colleagues earlier presented, the students that they interviewed mentioned not much of a difference between the online and the in-person. And that can be taken in a positive way. I think it might mean that our teachers are doing a better job, and in a way that the kids are actually feeling they're getting the content. So kudos to that. Anyone else with a question for Marty? Thank you very much. So can we move on to the SIPs?
Sure. Yeah, we'll do that now. So our school administrative team is waiting in the wings, and I suspect they'll turn their cameras on for all of us, and we'll talk. We're happy tonight to bring to you our school improvement plans. With everything that's been on their plates, I was looking at our school improvement plan presentation from last year, and it was December 10th. So we're actually a day ahead of where we were last year. So that's an additional reason to be proud of the amazing work that this team has done. I can't tell you just how complicated and challenging and complex their jobs have been, even in the last week or so, as they have worked to pull together staffing plans and respond to in very caring ways to their staff, as they're dealing with their own challenges, perhaps relating to illness or quarantining. So they deserve our recognition. We work together as a team. We're stronger together. We make decisions as a team. So I appreciate them joining us tonight to present their school improvement plans. So what I hope I'm just going to carefully pull up the slide deck here. It's brief, but hopefully a good way to organize our presentation for you tonight. Just give me 1 second. All right. So what we hope you will see tonight is some serious alignment across schools, but I also hope you'll see that what we talk about tonight and in the plans that are in your packet, the full plans that are in your packet, that they're very much aligned with the annual plan that I presented to you at your last meeting, and which are in turn very closely aligned with the school committee goals that were voted on at a meeting prior to that. So, when we have that systemic alignment, when we have that alignment from top to bottom, we're going to see greater results when one gear is turning the next. As part of the school improvement planning cycle, we are operating in an improvement cycle. This is perhaps a familiar planning cycle slide that you've seen in the past, but we're always, regardless of the school year, we're always in this mode where we are in plan implementation or we are monitoring progress and assessing our progress. Tonight, we're here to seek your review and perhaps approval of these school improvement plans. So quick background for community members who might be tuned in tonight. School improvement plans are developed by individual school councils. Individual school councils have full statutory authority under Mass General Law and have a very specific set of responsibilities that are legally outlined. And at each school, your own policy, the school committee policy, outlines what the representation of that school council should look like. And annually, we're responsible for presenting a plan to you. The full plans are in your meeting packet as we discussed. Our intention tonight is, we all have a lot on our plates, frankly, but our intention tonight is to provide sort of a high-level public overview of these school improvement plans. The plans are, we'd be here for probably longer than would be productive if we went plan by plan by plan and objective by objective. But our intention here is to sort of provide an overview of some of the essential objectives and hopefully demonstrate the alignment and consistency across all of our schools. The first, there are two goals. We developed school plans that are really sort of laser focused this year on some critical issues. The first goal relates to providing anti-racist, inclusive, identity-based educational practice. And so I want to ask Sue to provide for us an update on what this is looking like across all of our schools. And then the principals can feel free to sort of jump in and provide some perhaps school-specific information about what this might look like, and they can answer your questions too at the school level and what it might look like in their individual plans. So Sue, I want to credit Sue for providing some really critical leadership in this area. She has kept this topic on our agenda and has been great about identifying outside partners and identifying resources for us as a district. So I thought it might make sense to have Sue sort of present on some of the practices that are cutting across all of our schools and are found in all of our school improvement plans. So Sue, if I could turn it over to you, and the principals can add some school-specific detail as necessary.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Some of this might be a repeat because we've talked about this before, but A Better Lesson is a company that we're using at this point to do some coaching with 14 of our staff members. They're working with a coach on anti-racist practices in the classroom. Most everybody is up and running, and they've had their at least one session, if not more than one. They're finding it super helpful. We have staff calling their coach for advice kind of right after class or right before class. So that kind of coaching between a teacher and a coach on this topic especially has been super helpful. And then those folks who are being coached will take that practice back to their colleagues during an April PD Day. And also on that April PD Day, we'll have some additional anti-racist PD for K through 12, broken out from elementary for one session, and then 6 through 12 on kind of diving deeper into anti-racist practices. So that's A Better Lesson. CLE, or the Center for Leadership and Educational Equity, we're moving along with them. We have done a lot of data dumping, looking at data. At present, we're in the middle of our audit committee meetings. We have 4 scheduled, and we have had 2 so far. And this last one was just last week, I believe. We were looking at data on student achievement or subgroup student achievement and educators. So the groups kind of broke apart and grappled with that data to see where there were potential gaps, trying to identify some of those holes that we need to be filling. That was pretty interesting work. We have some work still to come with CLE. We are in the process of developing our survey for parents and some stakeholders. And so that will be coming at some point in the near future. It's a perception survey, which we found pretty interesting when the staff took that. So it'll be interesting to get that feedback from the parents as well. And then we have something really cool coming up, and I don't think our admin team even knows about this yet. We're going to be conducting empathy interviews with students from underrepresented subgroups. So our admin team will have the opportunity to speak with a student or two about their experiences here in the Longmeadow Public Schools and in the community at large. So we will be able to add that data into our all the data that we look at in coming up with our gaps in that
So can I
area.
just jump in on that?
Yeah.
The empathy interviews, I'm pleased that this is an opportunity for us. What we found when we were exploring the data is that sometimes there just wasn't enough substantial data and large enough cohorts to really yield any conclusions. And so I think the feeling was that we wanted to kind of drill down to the individual student experiences. And so looking forward to, kind of launching those empathy interviews. And it is, in the planning stages right now, but I think it's going to yield some very, very rich conclusions for us. So looking forward to that. Thanks for mentioning that, Sue.
Same, yep, same. Let's see, what else? So our last two meetings, I believe, we're planning them for February with the hopes that we kind of have one final meeting with central office staff and have our report to us by mid-March that should identify the gaps and then give us some action steps so that we can start to put those in place as soon as possible. Short of that, we have actually started to talk to the Collaborative for Educational Services, hoping that they'll be able to do some parent-facilitated virtual groups in the springtime about how to talk to your children about anti-racist things. And so looking forward to that. We're also in the very beginning stages of trying to get them to come and do some dialoguing with our students, maybe from our peer leadership classes. They'll come and teach our peer leaders to have dialogue on really sensitive topics and keep the conversation going and keep it safe and things like that. So I think that's really important work. And given our remoteness and our interesting schedules this year, we're going to see if we can schedule that in and make it happen during advisories or peer leadership classes and things like that at both the middle and the high school. So also something very brand new, so still have to talk to all of our administrators about that. What else? As far as curating curriculum, I'm hoping to provide some professional development on something called the Hill model that we, hey, look at you. That I don't want to read this to you, but HILL stands for Histories, Identities, Literacy, and Liberation, and really lets us as educators think about the students that we have sitting in front of them, what their identity is, and allows us to create our content based on, empowering the students sitting in front of us, and lets them understand who they are, lets them develop into the students that they want to be. So it's pretty deep work. It's going to involve a lot of professional development, and we're really at the really basic beginning stages for this. So we had so much PD on how to teach remotely that we don't have a lot of time left for other things, but we're going to get there. So we have, our anti-racist website is up and running. We added, I put the link on there, but the peer leadership group added some resources for students. And so they're up there now. And the website changes as often as we can get it to change, but there are a lot of awesome resources up on this. You don't have the website there, Marty, but you can get it off of the Longmeadow Public Schools webpage. It's right on the top bar there. Diane moved it up so you could see it. Those are the resources that we have available online.
So why don't we pause there, again, these are sort of initiatives that really cut across all of our schools, but maybe pause there for questions, and then certainly if the principals want to sort of add some examples of what this might look like at the school level, we can do that as well. But questions, do the committee have any questions relative to our goals in this area for this year?
Anyone on the committee have since the screen is being shared, if you do have a question, please unmute yourself and let me know, because I can't see everybody at the same time.
I can stop the share for a minute.
Okay, thank you. Anybody with any questions? I'm interested in hearing from, oh, go ahead, Gianna, you can go first.
I was just going to ask, and forgive me if it was mingled in there, but about the practices for recruiting and hiring more diverse staff. I saw what we're going to be doing for our students and our current staff. I just didn't know if there was any quick update on practices coming down the road for hiring and recruiting more diverse.
Yeah, I can, one of the projects that we're working on right now is with the help from our peer leadership class. Our students are often our greatest resources in these situations. They have put together a series of video clips that we hope to sort of splice together that will sort of help us project to the world who we want to be, and as a way to perhaps attract applicants who might have otherwise overlooked Longmeadow, or who we haven't done a good job of attracting in the past. And so the students, standing as the voice of this community, and them explaining to potential applicants why why it's important for them to have educators of color. We hope that we can pull that together and kind of make that showcase piece of our website at some point especially before the hiring season comes up in the spring. So it's a project that I think it's a good way to engage kids, but I think it has some potential benefits for us as well. So we have to figure out a way to ensure that is linked to our school spring job site, which right now it sort of stands as kind of a sort of generic portal for potential applicants. It doesn't really kind of have much character in terms of showing potential applicants who we are and who we want to be. So that project is underway.
Thank you. I forgot you had told us about. Thanks, Superintendent.
Yeah.
I would just want to add that in addition to what Marty said and the good work that we're doing and trying to frame Longmeadow in a way that people may not be familiar with, and show that we're more diverse than some potential candidates may think. We have historically reached out to colleges. We've reached out to colleges for teachers and for coaches, but one additional thing that we're doing this year that we weren't really intentional about until this year is we're reaching out to colleges for student teachers. Student teachers is really your farm team, and that's where people come and see and experience, and they spend 4 to 4 months or so at your school. They get involved with clubs, they get involved with the sports, they get involved with the students. So while reaching out to local colleges is something that we have been doing, we didn't necessarily have a focus on reaching out to colleges to encourage college students of color to come and student teach at LHS. So it's a tangible thing that we're trying. Mr. Dunkerley was on the phone again yesterday with Springfield College. We've formed some relationships. We have relationships with Westfield College, UMass, et cetera. But the goal is to not just reach out on a cold call, but establish particular contacts and increase the reputation of saying we're looking for good student teachers, and we're looking for student teachers who represent true diversity.
Sorry, can I? We actually, Marty, you and I talked to a couple of members of LARC, a couple weeks ago now, maybe 3 weeks ago now, and we've semi-recruited one of them who has got some experience with recruiting a diverse work group. So when we're ready to start posting for our new jobs in the spring, we will reach out and get some advice from him as well. And along those lines, on Thursday night, I want to say it's at 6:30, the select board anti-racist group has an open meeting link that they're hoping to get people to join. We have a couple meetings that night, so I'm hoping to get at least one of us gets to that. But if you want the link, let me know. I can send it to you.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Marty, if the principals could speak a little bit to the the creation of the SIPs and the teams and the people who are involved with creating this. I know we probably have a lot of return viewers, but maybe there are some new ones who would like to hear about the SIP process, maybe from their school level in particular.
Great question. Anyone want to take the lead on that? Appreciate the question, Ryan. I know they'll welcome the chance to thank their council members. So who would like to go? They're always much more talkative.
Okay, Landers, you want to go? I'll go. So if I understood the question correctly, you are just looking for us to explain a little bit more about our school councils, how they're compromised, and how we come to the school improvement plan. So in particular at Williams, our school council is made up of 2 students. They're both 8th graders. We have 4 parents. We have 3 teachers and myself on the school council. The school improvement plan, because it is a unique year, it was a little bit different in the creation this year. We kind of determined our 2 goals as an administrative team, knowing that it was really important that we focus on the inclusiveness and the racial diversity that we are striving to achieve this year and become better at and become more aware of. And then, of course, just being responsive to the pandemic and what we need to do to continue to educate children and students and be mindful of our staff, to safety, to health. So those were kind of how we came to our 2 overarching goals. And then at each level, I think we determined our objectives that applied to what we were doing. So at both Glenbrook and Williams, Nicole Allen and I worked very closely together to carve out our action steps. But because we have unique buildings, there were certainly some things that were a little bit different because we have slightly different staffing arrangements or who's available this year to teach based on who was on a leave of absence or whatnot. Our goals and action steps look a little bit different this year than they have in years past, but you'll also notice the similarities throughout our plan. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, Ryan, or if that gives people at home an idea of how we come to determine our school improvement plans, but I can certainly expand if you'd like me to.
Well, that's what I meant. I wanted people to understand that these don't just come out of thin air or copy and paste from last year. So yes. I don't know if anyone else wants to take the opportunity to talk about their own team, but that's exactly what I meant.
I would just add that we have 3 faculty members in addition to ourselves, 4 parents or guardians, and I just want to specifically identify individually the 4 student reps. Class of 21, Representative Ella Matthews. Class of 2022, Catherine Mulcahy. Class of 2023, Jillian Joseph, and class of 2024, Morgan Arena. And their voices, all the voices helped to create this, but their voices in particular, especially about the issues of diversity, racism, and what it's like to learn synchronously and asynchronously, and the pros and cons and challenges. They were very helpful in the creation of the action steps.
Did any of the principals talk? Would anyone be willing to share a little bit about some of the topics that Sue talked about and how that is sort of playing out at your individual schools, some of the specific anti-racism work or the inclusive practice work that is in goal 1?
I'm happy to speak, but I don't want to monopolize. At the high school level, we have a full review of the curriculum to ensure that the curriculum that we have is diverse, and also an emphasis on being very intentional about clarifying for our students the diversity of the authors we're teaching, of the books that and readings and poems, etc. One of the things that we heard on our listening tour, if you will, over the summer, was that even when students were reading things of books and works of diverse authors, they didn't necessarily know it. And I know that may sound kind of strange, but we're being very intentional. English teachers were clear that, they said, we do biographies of the authors and this and that. And I mean, it's something as simple as showing a picture of the author and being very explicit about that. I shared those conversations, that listening tour of approximately 60 students or alum. I met with every teacher and department within the first few days and shared that face-to-face information. A commitment to continue to teaching hard history while ensuring that there are very clear boundaries and parameters. It's a crazy political atmosphere that we live in. I don't know if anybody noticed, but we want to embrace good dialogue and freedom of speech and discussion, debate, but make sure that we're teaching children how to argue respectfully and how to discuss respectfully. Like I said, the continued outreach to area colleges, specifically for candidates of colors and student teachers of color. And then we're working on a new class that you'll see hopefully next month, a proposal, Contemporary Issues in a Diverse America. It would be an elective for seniors in social studies.
I can chime in if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. We had a faculty meet. Well, to echo a little bit to what Landers was saying, I think that we're also doing a review in our school and at Williams too. Is just where the social studies and ELA department specifically was really looking through their stuff to diversify their text and what they're working with. And I know Sue has ordered a lot of new literacy for our ELA teachers based on the audit that they did with their collection. So we are really working to diversify that area. Now, November 2nd, we ran at the middle school, we ran our faculty meeting on this topic. We used some things from, I believe it was the Better Lesson, that original PD, Sue. I might be wrong on that, when all the staff participated in the breakout groups. Was it that? I think it was that. And then we used some stuff from that to create our own faculty meeting with it, where we had teachers take a self-assessment on, test yourself for hidden biases, and then moved along and did breakout work on that. And they took a race impact association test as well. And then they talked a little bit about how that affects that and how the information that they gathered could change their approach on the different systems, the assessment, supports, teaching, and culture. And then it kind of, they looked at a different area and kind of put themselves on that zone chart, which I think was from Better Lesson as well. So we took some stuff from that original PD and then worked on it through the faculty meeting. Beth, jump in if I'm not
Nope, I was just gonna say that did come from Teaching Tolerance, the hidden bias that we had staff that
That's
exercise.
Right.
But the becoming anti-racist, which is that zone, how I think racism works now, the fear zone, the learning zone, the growth zone, that did come from the Better Lesson PD. So as a follow-up to the understanding your own bias, we had staff kind of try to understand where they were on the becoming anti-racist chart in terms of what zone they were in.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from Better Lesson.
I appreciate you both providing that sort of illustration of how we're trying to create the space for these conversations. And Tom mentioned creating space for students to have these difficult conversations, but also creating space for staff to reflect on their own practice. So we hope that we continue to carve out some time for that. Before we move on to the second goal, any other committee questions or comments at all?
I just want to thank them, because that was going to be my next question, was how is the actual actions going in your school regarding the anti-racist goal that we have put forth as a committee and you have in your plan. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. We'll go back to our last slide of the PowerPoint here. So the second goal relates to really managing with the safety and health of staff and students in mind during this pandemic year. And so you'll see in the plans a series of objectives that cut across all of our schools. But one of the things that I hope you're seeing is that we are continuously committed to refining our practices. And the hard work around remote teaching and learning, it began in the spring. We augmented that with some training in the summer. And then to start the school year, we had some dedicated time. But all along, each day, our administrators and our teachers are working to refine their practices and look at school schedules. So we have a lot of time behind us, but there's still a lot of time in front of us in terms of the remainder of the school year. So I thought we'd provide a little sampling for you of how we are continuing to refine instructional strategies and schedules. And we'll turn if we could to the middle school again to talk a little bit about some of the review that they are in the middle of. So again, back to Nicole Allen and Beth Nelson. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that we're taking a look at is the X block, which is a block in the middle of the day where we conduct our 3 lunches, students receive services, we have mass breaks, we try to get them outside as much as possible for those, recess opportunities, and then an opportunity for students to do their schoolwork. And so we're going to continue to reflect and refine the X block so we can maximize time on core academics, especially now that we're switching to remote. We started some of this work last week, and the teachers were, being creative with the X block by setting up individual and small group instruction, help sessions, check-ins, content-specific support, zoning in on certain standards, and almost like reteaching and having time to do that, reviewing topics. And then what's great about that, and in the next couple of weeks, is that teachers can combine cohorts and classes because they're remote, so it doesn't matter. So they can be a little more strategic on how they're grouping kids and supporting them as well. And I know that at Glenbrook, 6th grade had already, before we switched to remote, was already trying to work with kids based on iReady data on how we can take the kids that are in their classes, but offer them support and make sure that they're strategically utilizing that time appropriately and beneficial to the kids.
And then as recently as this past Monday, with the start of trimester 2, at both middle schools, we're able to begin utilizing our lab classes, so our literacy lab and math lab, to really get back to some targeted and tiered intervention for our students who we determined through iReady data and first trimester grades, academics, attendance, and mental health, who really needed that targeted tiered instruction for math and ELA. So as of this Monday, we were able to start scheduling that into some of our students' X block schedule. So they're actually getting tiered instruction and intervention during that X block. So we are continuing to look at student data and look at students who would benefit from that level of intervention. We're hoping to continue to expand it, but we were able to start with small groups of students this past Monday in using both our math lab and literacy lab.
Thank you. Tom Landers, we talked a little bit at the top of the meeting about sort of assessment in a remote world, and this is something that I think we've talked a lot about as an administrative team, particularly as we move into different marking periods and teachers are putting together report cards. How do we understand student progress? How do we assess their growth? And Tom, if you want to share some thoughts on how that's shaking out at the high school, and then if any of the other principals want to jump in on this, certainly feel free.
Sure. So project-based work and project-based assessment has grown exponentially out of the need, out of as we've said before, out of something challenging, hopefully good things come, and that has grown. I don't want to say that project-based assessment and projects weren't part of LHS, but it has absolutely grown. It's funny, Maxim said as one of his comments, there's significant less testing this year. There isn't. It just looks different. It truly has been revolutionized based out of need. There were some comments before about open resource. While not every assessment is open resource, so much and so many of them are. There's an emphasis on synthesis of information and knowledge rather than proving that you just have the information of knowledge, doing something with it, building something with it. It's not without its challenges, especially in mathematics in particular. I've spent a lot of time listening and talking to math teachers. But let me give an example from the world of science and math. Gizmo is a tool, an online tool, interactive inquiry-based tool that some of our teachers used last year. The district invested in it, and it allows for all kinds of simulations. I watched a bio lab about a week ago, and it was amazing. It was an animated bio lab where there's an example of something that we will use long after COVID. It addresses issues of access of students who might not be able to be in school or might be homebound. It also addresses issues of ethics in science, because we always run into some students who struggle with working on dead animals and things like that. But in addition to that, it also allows for science experiments. So you can actually pick up an animated beaker and add X amount to whatever you're doing, and it was amazing. That was an assessment. It was an assessment that we weren't using last year. Research, professional presentations, the chamber concert, the music that hopefully you all saw. Bridget Touquette was on earlier. Oh my God, Bridget Touquette rocked that. If you didn't see her performance on the chamber concert, go and watch it. Art. One of the things that we've noticed is how much more students are required to communicate. Communication is challenged through technology that you're not face to face. But I watched a student explain to an art teacher what she had learned and how she had approached the project. It was challenging, but it certainly honed and sharpened her skills there. So those are some examples of assessment. It really has forced us to expedite the things that were going on and think outside the box. So lots of different types of assessment being used, and open resource and project base has, like I said, grown exponentially.
And Tom, I want to mention, there was a committee member who had asked me earlier about, students who are struggling in remote teaching and in this environment. And there's been some articles in nationally on this topic. And, it seems to me that this sort of more project-based approach that you're describing, I suspect it gives students multiple opportunities to demonstrate their learning. And so hopefully, helps address the disengagement or the struggles that some students might have. So I think it's a great thing. And, to the extent that we can continue to nurture that, we're all for that. So I think that's it's an important way to make sure that we're helping kids be successful and have multiple chances to be successful. So we'll keep moving and we can come back to some questions. Jean Fontaine, our Director of Pupil Services, here tonight. I thought it might be a good opportunity for the committee to hear how we're trying to sort of sustain in-person instruction for some of our most vulnerable students and for students in the integrated preschool, which Jean is also responsible for. So Jean,
yeah,
take it.
Yeah. So first, I just want to remind everyone that our specialized programs in preschool were the first students to return this fall on September 14th. Not all of our programs, but on September 14th, 6 of our intensive needs programs, as well as our preschool, started in-person learning. And we have sustained that up until today. And I just think that is absolutely amazing. In October, we were able to add the other 5 programs so that all 11 district programs, those students are in school either 4 or 4.5 days a week. Our preschool is actually in 5 days a week. So they are our only on-site students on Wednesday afternoons, which has been wonderful. I think it's a tribute to the dedication of this committee, to the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the nurses, the related service providers, the support staff, our building principals, all of everyone that made that possible. So it has been an amazing thing to be able to offer in-person learning to students who truly can't access remote learning. So these are our most challenged learners. And I think we have identified about 115 of them, and it takes about 80 staff to educate them. And it has just, I think they've done an incredible job of coming in and doing what's best for kids. And so they'll be remote the next couple of days. And our hope is that if it's safe and possible, to reopen our programs on Monday, the 14th. Similar to many of the other communities around us, the other LPVEC communities, their severe or intense special needs students are in person and have been most of the year. So it's our goal to continue to make that commitment to these learners and families. And I just can't be more proud of staff and appreciative of their efforts, including all of the administrators on this call tonight. Have been amazing supporting the staff that has had to come in when others have been working remotely. So that's just been wonderful. So hopefully we can keep them going, because it is so important, because when these students are remote, many of them just truly cannot access it. So that's the goal.
Jean, thanks for that. And yeah, thanks to, as you say, thanks to the staff that, provide direct service to those students and indirect service, and the administrators who oversee the programs in the buildings as well. So thanks so much. Nick George is our technology director, and he's been a key player. He works behind the scenes, but we appreciate his efforts. And I want the committee to understand that, we're not resting at all in terms of the technology supports and equipment we're trying to put in educators' hands. And Nick has been a busy guy this year, and we thank him for everything he's done. And Nick, maybe you can talk a little bit about the evolution of the supports and the equipment and what you're currently working on.
Yep, we collect staff feedback, and we get voluntary staff feedback all the time, and we listen to it and try to see what we can do to offer improvements and things that will make classroom management easier, or provide teachers the tools they need to do their jobs. And one of the things we were hearing from some teachers who had voluntarily, a handful had gone out and bought their own monitors, was how helpful it was to have a secondary monitor. So we were able to secure some and get them in fairly quickly. We had limited, selection available, but we were able to find some that were in stock and cost effective, and get those in and distributed to staff, and get people some assistance to have it set up. So it really makes classroom management a lot easier, instead of having your screen limited to one 13-inch laptop screen and trying to juggle Google Classroom and Zooms and Google Meet and all of those things simultaneously. It just gives you a little bit of room to breathe as a teacher. So it's not like the tool solves all the challenges, but it is one tool that helps make things a little bit easier for them. So we were happy to get that out to those who wanted it. And we are getting responses from some people who are now seeing it used effectively in classrooms and are interested in some guidance and help to get it set up. And we still have some available, so we're getting those out to people as we can. And along the same lines, we also upgraded to Google's enterprise education platform recently. So that brought some much requested features that teachers wanted, that in some cases they hadn't even been built into Google yet, or in other cases they were products that we didn't have at our tier of service. And some of the things that they now have access to as a result of that upgrade are breakout rooms in Google Meet, built-in polling in Google Meet, automated attendance features so teachers can get reports on which students attended during a call, student authenticity reports. It just provides for work, kind of like a Turnitin service. So it just provides a lot more features and functionality that teachers have been looking for under one product suite, instead of having them go elsewhere, have to juggle multiple tools to do the job. And the feedback we've gotten on some of those features has been positive as well. On a continuing basis, we're of course providing technology support through the help desk staff at our help desk email address, our internal phone calls. We have a great team there, and they're constantly working and responding to questions from families and teachers. And I know that they've been a good resource to a lot of people. Sandy Budrow continues to keep the Tech Corner website up to date on an ongoing basis with instructional technology guidance. and very frequently sends out emails with new instructional tools and tips and all sorts of things that I know teachers get a lot of value from. So she's really provided a lot of value to the district along with the rest of the team this year, and being a partner with teachers and as we kind of navigate these new waters. As we transition to remote instruction, we do have access to us a remote help desk vendor we're partnering with that will be able to provide as well some additional after hours technical support to families. So once we hit 4:30 and there's no one from Longmeadow Public Schools staffing the help desk phone number, we're going to be able to transition over for a few hours in the evening so that families and students who have technical problems with their Chromebooks won't have to wait until the following day or maybe miss out on early instruction the following day. They'll have some resources available to them. And yeah, we just continue to solicit feedback and listen to it and see what ways we can try to help technology make the job a little bit easier and be less of a challenge for people. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but a good partnership between the technology department and everyone.
Nick, thanks for that. One of the questions the committee has asked us to think about in recent weeks is sort of how will we be different? When we're on the other side of this pandemic, how will we have grown and changed as a district? And I think in so many of the initiatives that you've led, we will come out stronger and better, and are stronger and better. And think about the acceleration of the one-to-one Chromebook deployment. I mean, that happened with great speed. Think about the device management and deployment, the software management and deployment, and then the skills that everyone has learned. I mean, it was this time last year, maybe many of us would not have been able to effectively navigate Zoom, and so that's just one small example. But I think we will look back at this period as a time where it accelerated a lot of important good directions in technology. So
well put.
Yeah, thanks for your leadership there, Nick. So before we get to our elementary principals to talk about 3 through 5 learning and possibilities for in-person learning down the road, questions for on the topics we just covered, the middle school schedules, the high school assessment, special education, technology.
Anyone? Again, please just unmute yourself and let me know.
So this is Kevin. Thanks to everybody for the update. I mean, that was super helpful. And it's always great to hear directly from you guys about what's going on in the school. So thank you for all your hard work, everything that teachers are doing. And this has been really helpful. The one question I had was actually for Nick, because Nick, I think you sent around an email to us about other towns getting attacked through folks clicking on attachments and stuff. And I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit, especially, whether that's something that if students use their account, if parents are helping them, like how much are you concerned about not just staff, but also anybody on the network doing something that's going to cause you massive problems?
Yeah, good question. And thank you for bringing attention to that. Just in case anyone wants any background on it, the background is that there's been a lot of attacks on municipalities and public schools recently, cyber attacks and ransomware attacks where people get a foothold into your network and encrypt your data and hold it for ransom. And the reason they're doing this is because municipalities generally lack the funding or some of the controls that larger organizations would have. And so they're kind of a low-hanging fruit and an easy target for these people. Certainly, it's a shared responsibility among us all, between staff and students and all of us who have a presence on the Longmeadow network or have a Longmeadow account. The student accounts are a bit of a less of a threat because of the level of access and the way that those accounts are segmented. And the other thing that protects us in some cases, for example, one of the ways these threats intrude onto a network in the most common way is by a phishing email, right? And most of our student accounts aren't actually able to accept outside emails, for example. We only have outgoing emails allowed to student accounts at, I think, 8th grade and up. So our youngest students aren't exposed to that threat necessarily. And we have tools deployed on our Chromebooks, for example, to provide more stringent web filtering for students, and the filtering is more aggressive at younger grade levels. But our guidance would be the same to students that it would be to staff, to be skeptical of the things you receive via email, to be mindful of the things that you're clicking on and what you're downloading. Most of our focus has been on staff accounts because those are the accounts that generally have a higher degree of access. And if an attacker is able to gain access, they have more of a presence, or there's more possibility there. But it is something that we would want everyone to be mindful of when they're engaging in online activity, to be skeptical and cautious, and to pause before clicking on a link and be thoughtful about it. We've certainly engaged in a lot of efforts on our own to make ourselves more resilient and more protected in the event of an attack. One of the areas that we work very hard on is on backup, for example, because one of the things that it's very, very difficult to prevent every means of attack from someone getting into a network or compromising an account. And certainly we're putting a ton of effort there and getting better every day. But the last defense you have against that kind of an attack is having good backups, because after all, these people are holding your data for hostage. So if all else fails and someone gains access to your data and is able to encrypt it or remove your access to it, at least what you want to be able to say in that case is, we're not paying the ransom. We're going to restore from backup. Thanks anyway, and send them on their way. And so a lot of our effort has also been to make sure that our backups are sound and tested and occur frequently, and that if we are ever in the unfortunate event of being hit with a ransomware attack, like a lot of communities have been, that we'll be able to say that we have good backups for the data that's important to us and that we can recover from it.
Thank you, Nick. That's super helpful. And the only thing that I would add is just something that was in the message that you sent, which is, if you're at all skeptical, send Nick an email. You said your team.
Well, let me just modify that a little bit and say send help desk an email.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. But your team, right? Your team is happy to get those emails if somebody is unsure if they should click on a link or open something. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for reiterating that, because it is intimidating to try to keep in your head all of the rules we try to tell people about what is a safe email and what should you be skeptical of. And we're not saying anyone has to be perfect. We're just saying we want you to pause. And if you're unsure, reach out to us and we'll lend a hand. So good point. And I'm glad you mentioned that. That's the strongest takeaway we want people to have.
Thank you, Nick. Any other questions before we move on? Gianna?
Ryan? Oh, thanks, Superintendent. Yeah, it's not so much a question. I just wanted to, and I know I've said this before, but I just wanted to thank everybody involved for, I know it's easy to kind of put a focus on academics, but I just really, truly appreciate the continued inclusion and focus on mental health and social emotional wellness, you know, from everything from those empathy interviews to communication practice, to the tiered, you know, interventions for the social emotional wellness. Again, I know I've said it, but I just think it merits, it's worth repeating because it's truly valuable and appreciated.
Thank you. We have just a couple more things to cover. And next week, we will talk more in depth with you about the feasibility study that we have been engaged in to see if we can bring students in grades 3 through 5 back for in-person learning. And I know it might feel like a contradiction to be talking about this tonight and next week, but I think it's an important part of our commitment to, you know, that we believe in in-person learning. We're committed to it. We believe we can do it safely. And we want to be prepared when conditions are right. You've heard a lot from our elementary principals this year. They have worked hard to develop plans for in-person learning, and they're still at it. And we thought it might make sense for them just to briefly update you on where that work stands, that you will hear more about next week. So Anna Marie or Amy?
I'm going to be the spokesperson. So again, we want to thank you for giving us the go-ahead to start looking at that. We did post the positions and we did do some interviews last week. We will wrap up the interviews this week.
And because that was a very crucial part is the personnel. We continue to look at schedules. We're always looking at space, and we look forward to coming to you with a plan next week. Donna and Amy, I don't know if you want anything to add.
Just one thing to add. Thank you, Marie. Again, yeah, and thanks to the school committee for allowing us to move forward with that big piece of our feasibility study. An added challenge for staffing, we're also hiring a 3rd grade teacher at Blueberry Hill. I have a teacher who is retiring, so that's kind of a competing staffing need that we have right now, but hopefully that will get secured and with a wonderful staff member, and then we'll be able to secure that and then move forward with our return of more students, possibly in grades 3, 4, and 5. Simultaneously, part of our feasibility study is also to look at the way that teachers are right now required to teach students in person and students remotely. We also know that if we are not able to secure staffing, that we need to look at what might or what has to change about our instructional practices and our model so that we can sustain the well-being, the mental health of our teaching staff. So that's also kind of entrenched in that work, not just looking at hiring and scheduling and staffing and buildings, excuse me, but also that instructional model practice. And we may have to shift based on our work that we're finishing up this weekend and even next week. So I think it's important for all of us to understand that and be really transparent about moving forward for our teachers too. So
thank you, Marie and Amy and Donna, for your work on that. And if the committee has any specific questions or anything they want us to explore or present next week, you can let us know at any point. So the last piece of this, again, should be brief. It relates to school-based health plans, safety teams. And each school, as part of our agreement with the Longmeadow Education Association, each school has a school-based safety team. And that work is helped along by public safety officials, public health officials. And I thought I'd once again put our middle school principals on the spot and ask them to talk a little bit about how those teams are working at the middle school level.
Okay, so like Marty said, we did create school-based health and safety teams, and we all have different priority areas to focus on depending on our building. So the members on our team we have 3 teachers, we have our school nurse, we have assistant principal, myself, Nick Georgantis, and our custodian when available. So a variety of things that we discuss at our meetings is the heating and ventilation at Glenbrook. I know that we've talked about this with you guys before, and it definitely continues to be a concern. The cold water in the faucets, it doesn't turn to hot unless you do something in the morning. So I think teachers are wondering, is it okay to wash your hands in cold water and not have it be hot water? So that was one of our topics on one of the days that we met. The temperature control in rooms, which is continuing to be a concern. The windows are open and, it's just making rooms extremely cold. We went around with a temperature gun and the last couple of days, and it was pretty cold in the building to the point where, if you walked around, you'd pretty much see everybody wearing jackets and hats, students and staff. And then we have air purifiers because I think we don't have ionizers in our building. So I don't even know what I'm talking about, I think, when I say that stuff. So Nick Georgantis was here, maybe he'd make it sound a little bit better. But so we have air purifiers now in different rooms, but one of the things we talked about at our meeting was the sensors were giving off a different color, red or amber, which meant it wasn't good. So then we had to go and talk to the company and see what that means. And there's particles in the air. So they put CO2 loggers in our building to try to gather more information. And then the poor air quality in the library, as well as we identified classrooms in 6th grade that when the fire department came in and put smoke in the buildings to see how quickly it would, vanish. It didn't in these specific areas. So they had to put these exhaust fans in the windows in the 6th grade classrooms, which has also made it a little bit colder. And you can't plug that in and purifier at the same time because it will blow fuse. So we're struggling with those kind of things in our building.
Great job explaining that, Principal Allen.
I don't even really know what I said, but I think I blacked out.
That was fantastic.
I know Tom Mazza has earned a honorary HVAC degree. So if you'd like any clarification on that, feel free to ask. These safety teams are a good landing spot for some really critical conversations. Nicole's description of the electrical and HVAC challenges at Glenbrook also remind us that we need to pay attention to the overall facility needs of our two middle schools, which I hope to talk to the committee about next week, so we can segue into that. Beth, anything to add from your building?
Very similar. We have the similar makeup to our health and safety team. My 3 teachers, nurse, custodian, Nick Jorgantis and Andy Frazier, all join our meetings. We meet on the 3rd Thursday of every month. I tend to build the agenda, and then I ask the safety committee to just add anything that they're concerned about or that their colleagues are concerned about. So, we're talking about similar things to Glenbrook: building temperature, the univents with the ionizers, the expectations of the windows and doors in the classrooms, cleaning updates, staffing. And then some of the questions that come up from staff are, what do we do? Do we have a tissue box out on the desk this year? So little things like that people are just still so unsure of because this is so new. So processing questions like that and using our experts, Andy Frazier, Liz Gartman, and Nick Jorgantis, to really answer those nitty-gritty questions that you need an expert response from. Some of the issues that are more specific to Williams are our available space. We have smaller classrooms, so we really max out at 12 students in every classroom. So when we're thinking about bringing back more students for in-person learning and prioritizing who needs to come back 4 days a week, we get to a point where we're limited in what we can do based on our capacity. And so then it gets to, how can we be creative about the space that we're using? And room assignments, room arrangements, classroom assessments. That's really the conversations that we're having, and just trying to make sure that we're making the best use of our physical space to maximize student learning.
So thank you, guys. And again, that sort of process is playing out at the other schools as well. It's been an important part of of the management and the work that's happened this year. Final questions on the school improvement plans, anything we talked about, any topics that perhaps we didn't address that you'd like to hear more about?
Any committee members with a question?
Brian, I just wanted to make a comment. This is Bronwyn. I can't remember how long ago it was that we had the principals on here and just kind of talked about just all the positive feedback that I personally have been getting, more specifically about the high school and the middle schools, but also recently the K-2 return seems to be going really, really well. A lot of people are happy about that. But just to let everyone know, it's very much appreciated, all the hard work teachers are putting in to make this as smooth as possible for the students. And just please pass along that everyone appreciates it, and we know how difficult it must be. But we're almost halfway through the year, so thanks.
Thank you, Bronwyn. All right. Well, thank you for your time and attention, and thanks for the opportunity to present what you hopefully see as coordinated, aligned work and work that supports the specific goals that the committee had as well. So thanks for your time.
Well, thank you all. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this, and we appreciate it. Kevin?
I move on the recommendation of the individual school councils that the school committee approve the 2020-2021 school improvement plans for Blueberry Hill School, Center School, Wolf Swamp Road School, Glenbrook Middle School, Williams Middle School, and Longmeadow High School as presented.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Nicole? Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you all again.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time and support and consideration of the plans. Thank you to the administrative team for joining us and presenting proudly the work of your school councils.
Next up on our agenda, superintendent report. Marty, do you have more to talk about?
You've heard enough from me, I'd say. I'm good. Thank you.
For the chair report, I just would like to take the opportunity to echo what the chief said earlier, which is to pay attention to the health guidelines regarding COVID. If you're quarantining, that does not mean you get to go to a drive-through and get a coffee. You're actually supposed to stay home. And if you're taking a test, wait for the test to come back. If you think you might be sick, don't go talk to people. Please help us get your kids back into school on a regular basis. And the only way that happens is if everybody does what they're supposed to do. So it's just a plea on behalf of what the chief said earlier and what Marty said earlier. Please help us by following the rules. Student rep report. Maxim, you have more for us tonight.
I don't.
Well done, Maxim. Other reports, LPVEC,
Not tonight, thanks.
energy and sustainability.
Yeah, just briefly, we did meet, we're working on a grant for the Green Communities Grant, and that is likely to involve and ask for new and improved windows in center school. So I think I'll probably be in touch with Tom or maybe the town manager will be in touch with Tom, but we'll keep you updated on that.
Thank you. Open space? No report. Finance subcommittee reports. Finance sub does not have a report, but policy does.
Policy, there are, we had the comment, the policies available for public comment, and I think the public comment period has expired, Diane, is that correct? And so these policies would be ready for final vote?
Next on the 15th. We're just a few days shy of the 30-day posting.
All right, thank you.
No report from curriculum or evaluation. Gianna, you want to give something, just a brief summary of the naming subcommittee meeting that we had before this?
Superintendent, do you want to give that a?
Sure, happy to.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we had a proposal to name the track in honor of a retired coach and teacher from Longmeadow Public Schools, and the committee heard from the applicant, the naming subcommittee heard from the applicant and made a decision to refer the topic to the full committee for consideration next week. Per your policy, if it received a green light at your next meeting, it would then be subject to a public hearing. And then following that, the committee would take a final vote. So we got a few more stages to go through. Obviously, naming a facility or part of a facility is a significant step, and it needs careful and thoughtful attention, and you have very well-defined policies on that. Those will be in your meeting packet for the next meeting.
Thank you very much. Ongoing business, we have none. And we could have a recommended motion for an executive session if somebody would like to read that.
I'll make it. I move that the school committee meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation with collective bargaining with you A, B, C, D, E, F, H, and Purpose 7, consideration of release of executive session minutes of previous meetings to reconvene into open session.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Nicole? Bronwyn?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And yes for me. The school committee will meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation with collective bargaining with units A, B, C, D, E, F, H. And Purpose 7, consideration of release of executive session minutes of previous meetings to reconvene into open session. Thank you, folks. We will be back in a little bit. I would like to call the December 8th, 2020 meeting of the Longmeadow School Committee back into open session. First, under new business, we have named the negotiation subcommittee, and the representatives are going to be Nicole, Susie, and myself. And we also have a possible motion for a memorandum of agreement with Unit A.
I move that the school committee approve the memorandum of agreement between the Longmeadow School Committee and the Longmeadow Education Association, Unit A, dated December 8th, 2020, as revised, and authorize the chair to sign it.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for a roll call vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Yes, for me, the motion passes. Anyone else want to get that last motion?
I move that we adjourn the December 8th, 2020 school committee meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Yes, for me, the motion passes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.